sharing a different screen?
Yes, the Dream Center Undocumented Students in Higher Education screen.
Yes. Well, good morning. Would you like me to go ahead and get started? Oh, just to make sure that you would like me to go ahead and get started, correct?
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. It's really nice to see you, and thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you for making time and space to be in this space today. So my name is Rosa Salamanca. I'm the director for the Dream Center. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and ella. And today I will talk to you a little bit more about like undocumented students in higher education, and particularly like supporting students within the teaching field. So to do that, though, it's important to really talk about like what are some of the opportunities, the policies, and the limitations that undocumented students do face. So throughout this presentation, I'll go ahead and talk about all those things. And I hope that you can ask me questions as I go. If you have any questions for me, I will say I am known for kind of talking a little bit quickly. So if you'd like me to kind of slow down, and I'm also just drinking my cup of coffee here. So if you'd like me to slow down, please go ahead and let me know. And like I said, please ask me questions as I go. So let's go ahead and start with like laws and policy. So when we talk about like undocumented, so a lot of the times it's important to define what undocumented is. So the legal terminology would be the term undocumented immigrant refers to anyone residing in any given country without legal documentation. It includes people who enter the U.S. without inspection and proper permission from the government, and those who enter with a legal visa that is no longer valid. When we read this definition, it sounds a lot of different kind of like legal jargon, and oftentimes could be a little bit difficult to understand what the actual terminology means in practice, especially for students. So some of the ways that we can kind of break this down is that an undocumented person could be somebody who entered without an inspection. It could be somebody who entered with legal status but overstayed their visa. So sometimes we might have perhaps international students who overstay their visa, they become undocumented people, or we might just have somebody with a tourist visa, or anybody who came with some type of documentation, but they overstayed their permission to stay, so they sort of become undocumented. And why am I kind of emphasizing some of this is because sometimes I'm not saying, by the way, that an international student is an undocumented student, because that's not true. But what I am saying is that sometimes the students might tell us, or a person that we may be working with, they may say, well, I came here with a visa, but I don't know if it still works, kind of thing. Likely that means that they're undocumented. Or I came with a visa, my visa kind of still valid, but if they overstay their visa, then that means they became undocumented because they stayed here over the time they were supposed to stay. There's also an undocumented person is also somebody who's a DACA recipient or deferred action for childhood arrivals. And I'll talk a little bit about what DACA is in the next couple of slides. But DACA, the reason undocumented DACA recipients are also considered undocumented is because while DACA does provide a work permit and a social security number, it does not change somebody's immigration status. So in a sense, a student might still say, I am an undocumented person. Yes, I'm happy to share the slides. So a student might say, I am a DACA recipient, or they may say, the student may say, I'm an undocumented person. They may or may not mean that they're a DACA recipient. And I'll talk a little bit more about what DACA is, and again, in the next couple of slides. An undocumented person is also somebody who's currently in the process of legalizing. So sometimes we encounter students who tells us, well, my parents petitioned me, or my spouse petitioned me, or my siblings petitioned me, and like we have a petition in the process. Until immigration has not granted permission or granted whatever the status is that they're pursuing, then the person is considered an undocumented person. And this is one of the ones that's a little bit trickier because students might say kind of the things that I just said, right? Like, well, we have a petition in file. Well, the question is, where is the petition? Like, is it a petition that has already been approved, or is it still kind of in the waiting process, right? And if it's still in the waiting process, if there's no approval, then that person it's considered to be an undocumented person, and that process can take anywhere from months to years. And undocumented folks are also vulnerable immigrants. Okay. So in the state of Utah, there are policies and laws that impact undocumented students when it comes to higher education. So undocumented folks are able to attend public institutions in the state of Utah, and it's immigration status is not a requirement to be able to be admitted to the university. And this includes the University of Utah and also the other public institutions in the state of Utah. However, we do have laws that impact that could really impact how a person is categorized in the institution. So we have HB 144 and also SB 253. Actually, HB 144, which pretty much what HB 144 does is that it allows the opportunity for undocumented folks, and this law is not just for undocumented folks though, but it allows for undocumented folks to be able to qualify for institution. It does not change a person's immigration status, but what it does is that it allows a person to be able to be considered to be considered for institution. So what that means is that they wouldn't be considered an out-of-state student. They would be paying like a student who's a resident of the state of Utah, because undocumented students are residents of the state of Utah and are tax payers of the state of Utah. So individuals do have to have attended a Utah high school for 3 or more years, have to have graduated at Utah high school with a diploma or a GED, and they also have to submit an affidavit through the Office of Admissions to be able to be considered for institution purposes. If the students do not meet these requirements, unfortunately, they will not be considered institution students. They would be considered students for out of situation purposes. Also, we also have HB 118, which is a little bit more for international students, but also for individuals who also have attended a Utah high school as well. Again, I'll talk a little bit about DACA in the next couple of ones. Are there any questions so far?
I do have a question, Rosa. So, undocumented students have to sign and submit this affidavit. Does anyone else have access to it? Just because I'm sure some of them may be worried that like people would take advantage and like find out their status, and like with just with how the government was, and just with trying to get them deported or things like that. So so is that protected information?
Yeah, it's a highly protected information. Even us at the Dream Center do not have access to this information. And nobody else on campus really has access to this information. There's no listservs that are kept particularly on students who applied under this law because of the same reasons that you just stated. But also one of the other reasons is because, like I mentioned, not everybody who's actually qualifies for HB 144 is actually an undocumented person. So there may still be US citizens who had to actually be considered through this process just based on how their admissions, like certified status, kind of came to be about. So there are protections in place for that, for protecting the data and personal information of students.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so talking a little bit more about DACA. So as I mentioned already, DACA, it stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And in June 2012 is when DACA was announced. In 2017, DACA was rescinded. However, if you may or may not follow some of the immigration news, you probably may likely know that there has been a lot of political battles and a lot of involvement within the courts to determine whether DACA is unconstitutional and unlawful or not. So since 2017, the program has been in a lot of political limbo, which has obviously caused a lot of anxiety, frustration, fear, and uncertainty for a lot of folks. So in 2023, which is the most recent, a couple of months ago, back in September, DACA was declared unlawful. That's the latest court decision that we got. And what this means is that no first-time applications have been can be processed, and there's only renewals. So in a nutshell, anybody who qualifies for DACA, even if they meet all of the requirements, since 2017, they have not been able to apply for the program. Again, even if they meet all of the requirements, even if they could ideally qualify for it, because of this legal decisions that have happened, it has prevented a student or an individual from being able to actually apply for the program. DACA provides a temporary protection from deportation. It also provides a 2-year renewable work authorization and a social security card, which allows individuals to be able to be employable at the institution, but also in other places as well. So why am I mentioning a little bit about where DACA is at? One of the things that is also important to consider when we talk about higher education, people usually kind of think about, we associate undocumented students with DACA. And the reality is that right now, the majority of high school students that we're going to be receiving, that are going to be coming to the university, will not be DACA recipients because of where the program stands as it is, and because of where the program has been since 2017. It means that we are getting more and more and more undocumented students that do not have DACA. So it's extremely important to know this information, because if we are working perhaps with students in the K-12 system, students may be asking or wondering themselves the question, why should I even pursue a higher education? Or what are the opportunities, what are the options that exist for me to be in higher education? Which is why I was talking about, they do have access to come to the university and be considered for institution, regardless of what happens with DACA. We do have laws within the state of Utah, right? So that is one of the things that is important to know. The other thing that is important to know is, because if we work with college students in whatever setting, whether it is through in a peer relationship or as a faculty or as staff or whatever the capacity happens to be, it's also important to know and to understand that we're getting kind of like we're getting more, again, we're getting more and more undocumented students are not DACA recipients, which limits their opportunities and their limitations within the opportunities within the institution. So it creates limitations within the institution, but also within their ability to be able to work after college and to really think about what they can do with their degrees. DACA recipients are also eligible for what is called advanced parole, and advanced parole is it provides DACA recipients an opportunity to be able to travel outside of the United States, and individuals can apply to advanced parole under 3 circumstances, which is humanitarian, educational, and work reasons. So if there is, for example, a program within your department that might require students to be able to travel outside of the United States, that could be considered an academic or educational program that they can participate in, and they can apply to immigration to request permission to be able to participate in that program as a student. Again, this is only applicable to DACA recipients. So a student who is an undocumented student without DACA wouldn't be able to actually apply and qualify for that. Okay, so what are some of the types of immigration release form? I am not an attorney, so that's one of the first things that I would tell you. So I also can tell you that each one of these bullet points can likely take me about an hour, or an attorney probably about an hour to explain each one of them, but I'll just give you a very simple overview of what they are. So they're very limited types of immigration relief within the U.S. immigration system. So one of them is DACA, which we already talked about. The other one is temporary protected status, or also known as TPS, which is also provided for individuals who are who come from countries who have experienced any type of natural disaster, or who have also experienced some political there's been some political battles within the countries themselves, per se, like civil wars or some other like things that have really impacted countries' and ability to be able to like support their citizens. So that's also one of the ways that different folks have been able to access that. But temporary protected status is also very specific to the countries, and the U.S. government determines who that is provided to. So it wouldn't just be anybody who's coming from very difficult circumstances from different parts of the world. Special immigrant juvenile status, or also known as SIJs. There's also it's also provided for individuals who are under 21, who have been either part of the foster system, or who live without parents, or who don't have both of their parents in the United States, to be able to actually apply for SIJs, which is a way to be able to get a visa that will eventually also lead into a way to be able to become a U.S. citizen. But if the individuals don't meet all of the requirements, and also if they miss the 21-year-old, like if they age out, then they're not able to actually apply for this. U visa, T visa, and BAWA. So this is for individuals who are victims of human trafficking, domestic violence, and for as long as they also cooperate with the law enforcement within the investigations as well. Worker sponsorship is for individuals who are potentially sponsored by a job, by an employer, meaning an employer is petitioning them to be able to adjust their status. This is very rare to obtain because it also has to prove to the immigration system that the person who is being petitioned by the employer, it's an exceptional type of like individual. And not that I'm saying that undocumented folks are not, but what I'm saying in a nutshell is that it's a little bit one of the most difficult type of immigration relief forms to access for people, generally speaking. Family-based petition is one of the ones that is like the most common that people typically tend to know about. And this can happen from a spouse petitioning their spouse, or it could be parents petitioning their kids, kids petitioning their parents, or siblings petitioning their siblings. And those are the only ways that folks can petition family. So an uncle, an aunt is not able to petition their nieces or nephews, for example. Grandparents are not able to petition their grandchildren. So it really has to be from spouse to spouse, spouse to spouse, children to parents, parents to children, or siblings to siblings. Okay. And with that, oftentimes folks also like to kind of think, one of the jokes that I also kind of like to make is people also kind of sometimes say, well, why don't you just get in line? And one of the things that usually we say is, well, tell me where the line is, and we start making a line, because there's no line, right? This is not like Black Friday and everybody kind of camping out to like actually trying to get some of the products. There's no line to be able to apply for these things. So like I said, if individuals do not meet the requirements from the different types of immigration relief form, there's really not a way for somebody to adjust their status, meaning to be able to like become U.S. citizens without, regardless of how long maybe they have been in the country, regardless of the type of college degrees that they have, regardless of anything else or accolades. So really it goes down to the type of immigration relief that I already talked about. And this may be a little bit blurry on your end perhaps, but the fastest way for somebody to be able to become a U.S. citizen is they're petitioned by their spouse. And in the best case, that takes about somewhere between 6 to 7 years, or 3 to 6 years sometimes. But for example, this one right here, which is a children and siblings type of petition, it could take up to anywhere from like 12 to 28 years. And this is really when it is submitted to immigration. This is not when the person starts to work on the process with an attorney. This is not the time when the person arrived to the United States. These are the timeline processes that it takes since this lands in immigration's hand. So again, if the person maybe has been here for 20 years, they may still need to wait another 28 years to be able to adjust their status, right? Since they submit their petition. And in that period of time, depends on the type of immigration relief that they're applying to. That is a period of time that I was referring to, that they may still be considered undocumented during that time. Some immigration relief forms that they may be applying to actually might grant them a work authorization in the meantime, but some won't do that. So it really depends, again, on the type of immigration relief that they're applying to be able to do that. One of the easiest ways to be able to get a petition or to be able to get something processed or faster is by a U.S. citizen. So U.S. citizens and legal permanent residents or green card holders are also able to petition individuals. However, if the person is a U.S. citizen, the process will be a lot faster than if the person who is doing the petition, it's a legal permanent resident. And why am I kind of mentioning some of these things? I mentioned some of these things because it's important to know what are some of the, when we're working with individuals, oftentimes we might kind of say, well, why don't you apply for something, right? And it's important to refer individuals to students and people that we work with to the right resources, to immigration attorneys, so that they can actually get a consultation. And the U actually offers consultations also for students, but also for community members to learn about what their potential options could be. Because other than that, then again, this is like part of like what undocumented folks sort of feel about why should I even invest my time into going to school? Why should like maybe I should just like find a job instead, kind of thing, right? So I'll talk a little bit about how we address some of those in the next couple of slides. But some of the challenges, and particularly that undocumented students face, undocumented students are not eligible for any federally funded programs, including federal financial aid. So K through 12 undocumented students do have access to it, but anything that is federally funded, undocumented students and their family members will not qualify for. That includes things like TRIO programs, includes things like Medicare, or even if or any other type of like even basic needs type of programs. Undocumented students with and without DACA in the state of Utah are not able to actually qualify for these resources. If there's no DACA, that means that they don't have a social security, which also means that they have limited opportunities in qualifying for things that require them to do to present a type of ID. So for example, I'm not really familiar with the requirements to become a teacher per se, but for example, if there's a requirement to have to take a test to become a teacher, to get accredited, for somebody who may be interested in being a teacher, if they have to do that, likely they will not be able to even take the test because they're likely going to need to provide an ID that is from the government, and they wouldn't be able to provide that type of ID. And sometimes also undocumented folks may not even be able to also get accredited as well because they're undocumented people. So it also limits those options for individuals. There's no work authorization, there's no paid internships and fellowships. There also means that life after college, it means like there's no stability and there's no employment opportunities. There's limited financial support. They cannot travel when official ID is required. So sometimes while individuals are able to travel within the states, within different states within the United States, I actually have students who might tell me that they don't want to travel to another state, even driving, because they may be afraid of getting stopped with their family members. Or they may not want to travel by plane with their passport or something that is not a US government ID. So they'd rather perhaps not travel, right? So it's important to also think about if as teachers, perhaps we're thinking of putting together a program to take students to travel to Hawaii or somewhere else. Like it's important to also think about like, is this accessible to undocumented individuals? And while the undocumented folks without DACA are able to travel within the states, the different states, they also cannot travel to US territory. So they wouldn't be able to travel to like Puerto Rico or other places that are technically not US, that are not considered states inherently, but they are considered territories. They would not really be able to travel to those places. There's also a lack of knowledge regarding laws, rights, and policies. So one of the things that we find out a lot and oftentimes is that while there are different policies and laws in place to support undocumented individuals, there's also still a lot of work to be done to be aware of what this type of information is, to be able to provide students with the right resources on how to navigate this. Paying for college. So yes, undocumented students do not qualify for financial aid. Let me kind of quickly take a look at the question here. Can they work for jobs on campus? They cannot have a job on campus if they do not have a social security, an actual job. However, what we could do is that there could be leadership scholarships per se. So students receive a scholarship rather than a payment, and they're not hired by the institution. And they participate in professional development opportunities as part of that leadership scholarship. We also have fellowship programs that we have worked with a couple of departments on campus to create. And also we have a fellowship program at the Dream Center that allows undocumented individuals to be able to actually have professional development and experiential learning opportunity, but it's not considered employment. So an actual employment, a traditional employment opportunity, unless the person has DACA, they will not be able to participate as undocumented individuals. So paying for college, there are some options that students do have. So in the state, in the University of Utah, it's one of the two campuses in the state of Utah that has a partnership with a national organization called the Dream the US. And this organization provides up to $33,000 for students who come to the university who are undocumented students to pay for their tuition. And this is particularly for undocumented students with or without DACA and also with a temporary protected status. The applications typically open around September. Actually, the applications are open right now, and they close around February of the following year. This is open to incoming students, both from high school and community colleges, and it's also open to current students. So if you have any students or if you know anybody who is either in one of these, whether it is already on campus or in a high school or a community college, and they're interested in coming to the University of Utah, they can apply to this scholarship. Again, this is part of a national organization. We are not the ones inherently funding the scholarship. We just have a partnership with them. There are also community scholarships that the students can also apply to. There are very limited community scholarships. And we also offered a couple of scholarships at the Dream Center, and also some campus departments also offer scholarships that are open to undocumented students. There are some limited internship fellowships and job opportunities. Like I mentioned, we have worked with a couple of departments on campus to be able to establish or formalize some of these efforts a little bit more. But again, they're very limited options for students. So we don't have a lot of opportunity for students to be able to participate in these efforts. Students also engage in fundraisers or also like an undocumented hustle. So we have students, for example, who have their own type of like side hustle, like a business. There's a student who has a photography business, and that's one of the ways that they're able to also get additional income to be able to like sustain themselves as a student. Students sometimes also do fundraisers, like selling food and working with other communities to be able to like actually fundraise for some of that money. So at the Dream Center, so what are we doing? So there are some things that we're doing to be able to help with this. So at the Dream Center, so through partnerships, the Dream Center advances equity and creates accessible services and programs and opportunities to support the holistic development of undocumented students and students systematically impacted by immigration to help them thrive at the university and beyond. We primarily focus on supporting undocumented students with and without DACA, students who have temporary protected status or TPS, recently arrived students, and students with immigration status families, and then a student who's a student. Mixed status families means that a person may or may not be undocumented themselves, perhaps, but there is a family member within their nuclear family who is considered an undocumented person, and that by definition makes a family a mixed status family. We also support students who have from refugee backgrounds as well. I will say that the vast majority of the work that we do is really focus on undocumented students themselves, but we do support students in these other categories through a couple of different efforts. So some of the services and resources that we provide, so and generally speaking, if I had to tell you in one sentence of what we do, is that we support students navigating higher education as an undocumented student, and that it can mean a variety of different things. So for example, if students are interested in learning about HB 154, which is the law that allows them to be able to qualify for institution, what the affidavit is, what the offices that they need to like submit this to. So we do not process the forms ourselves, but we do provide assistance to students, incoming students, especially who need to complete this process. We offered and talked to them about undocumented-friendly scholarships and any financial resources that can help them navigate the institution and pay for their tuition and any other academic related fees. We're also offered opportunities available to undocumented students with and without DACA. We do referrals to a vast majority of departments on campus, like the financial resources, wellness support, internships, leadership opportunities, basic needs, and other type of things that they may be able to qualify and get access to on campus. And also on campus is needed as off campus is needed as well. We do provide information on graduate school. So sometimes students are asking about, what are my options for graduate school? Can I go to graduate school? What can I pursue if I go to graduate school? So we are not a graduate school office inherently, but we do talk to students a little bit more about it, specifically for them as undocumented people. What are some of the options and limitations that they may encounter in graduate school? Because we are partners with the Dream the US, we also have to provide advising specifically for students who receive the Dream the US scholarship, and we also do wellness support as well. The programs and events that we offer, so we do have 3 programs at the Dream Center, actually 4 programs. We have a Visionary Scholars Program, which is specifically for first year and second year students to help them learn how to navigate the university. So this is a cohort-like program where students participate in monthly sessions to learn about resources, to learn about different academic and social belonging components on how to successfully navigate the university as a undocumented student. We also have the Life After College program, and we also have two cohorts for this. One of the cohorts focuses more on entrepreneurship and independent contracting, or just simply like creative ways to make money. So as undocumented people, even if they don't have DACA, meaning they also don't have a work authorization, they might not really be able to actually work per se, but they can actually make income if they do independent contracting, if they do freelancing, if they open up a business. So we really have the purpose of this cohort and within the program is to help students understand what their options are. So while the limitation is that they cannot have a job, it also doesn't mean that they cannot put their degree into practice, and it also doesn't mean that they cannot make income. So the program really focuses on like helping students like understand what those options could look like. One of the other cohort of the program, it's a little bit more of an exploratory cohort where students get to learn a little bit more, generally speaking, what can I even do when I graduate? So sort of an overview of entrepreneurship with an overview of graduate school, with also having conversations about how difficult it is to navigate the life after college. For those of us who probably have already graduated from college, we know that oftentimes, especially as first generation individuals, family members may have expectations if you're already going to have a job once you graduate, and the reality is that it doesn't really always land that way. Or so we have those kind of like conversations with students and how to like navigate family expectations, or own expectations, society expectations, to be able to prepare them for life after college. We also have the Dream the US internship program, and this is a program that allows us to place students in different departments on campus who are interested in doing an internship, and we provide funding for the students to participate in the internship while doing professional development and experiential learning opportunities in other departments on campus. We have an Aspire Fellowship program. These are students who are placed directly at the Dream Center. The vision is that in the future, we'll get to place students in other departments on campus, both student services, but also academic departments, where students get to put their skills into practice, and they also get a scholarship for being part of the program. We offer events like Undocu Talks, and this is a space for students to really come together and talk about what does it mean to be undocumented, things like dating as an undocumented person, or navigating the use an undocumented person, or just simply creating a space for students to be able to be authentically themselves and to have conversations that are very focused to their identity. In the Undocu Wisdom series, this is a series of events that we provide to the campus community, to students, staff, faculty, and anybody who's interested in joining to learn about different topics that are impacting undocumented individuals. So some of the ones that we're going to be having this year, for example, is conversations about being undocumented and Black, and being undocumented and AAPI, and like what is that student looks like, what are the intersectionalities of undocumented individuals. So really tapping into the wisdom of undocumented people themselves. And we do also other general events and partnerships with different departments on campus. And this is in a nutshell everything that we do as part of our programs and services. We also have a student organization on campus, and this is called Somewhere Dreamers. And this is a student-led organization at the University of Utah who focuses on promoting, supporting, and advocating for the undocumented community. So this is also another resource for students to get to build community, to increase their belonging, their sense of belonging on campus, and to connect with other like-minded folks. The diversity. So one of the things that is important to talk about when it comes to the undocumented community, the mainstream media has made the undocumented topic a very Mexicanized Latinx perspective. And when we kind of look at how things are portrayed, especially in like mainstream media, we are typically tend to look at individuals who are coming from Latinx background. The reality is though that while a majority of people are coming or are undocumented folks from Latin America, and we do have about 11.2, about 12 million of undocumented folks, there's really not a way to be able to count exactly how many people we have in the United States as undocumented folks. The reality is that, again, while most people are coming from Latin America, the people are coming from different parts of the world. And I always like to highlight, because I always find it really interesting, there's a 3% of Canadians who live in the United States who are undocumented people. 3% of Europeans who live in the US who are also undocumented people. And to tell the truth, I think that in the mainstream media, we don't really talk about those narratives. And it's pretty surprising to me to also learn about this, right? We have about 1.4 million folks who are coming from Asia, and 3% who are from Africa. So it's important to be aware of our own assumptions when working with individuals, because oftentimes we may assume that a person who is Latinx is likely going to be an undocumented person per se. So it's important to be aware of our assumptions. To also, as we work with students, to use an intersectional approach. And again, to remember that immigration is not a Latinx issue only. Undocumented Black folks, there's approximately actually 8.7 undocumented, approximately 8.7 of the United States foreign-born population is Black. 16% of Black immigrants are undocumented. A significant number of undocumented Black immigrants do not qualify for DACA, and 20.3% are at risk for facing deportation on criminal grounds. And Haitians had the second highest NIR rate at 87% for asylum-seeking purposes. So, Black folks are already facing a great type of issues, and being an undocumented Black person also just add an extra layer to that component. Undocumented API folks, there are 11.5 million undocumented people, and 1.3 are undocumented Asian Pacific Islander, which means that 1 in 10 undocumented people are actually Asian Pacific Islander. Again, so there are folks coming from different parts of the world. There's every day 1,100 people that are deported, particularly from AAPI backgrounds. And one of the things that working with different communities, I am not part of the Black or AAPI community, but what I have learned through working directly with students, but also what the research also says, is that for an undocumented Latinx person, it's a lot easier to sometimes talk a little bit more about their status, because it's a little bit more normalized within the communities. But oftentimes, individuals that come perhaps from an AAPI backgrounds or Black communities do kind of feel a little bit more worried about being able to talk about their statuses, because it's not inherently so normalized within the community. So I've had students who tell me, well, I don't want to tell anybody because my parents actually told me not to even tell my siblings that I was undocumented. So I don't want to come to campus and tell people that I am an undocumented person, right? So when working with folks, it's important to think about that folks might not always want to feel comfortable disclosing what their status is and who they are, which is why it's important to think about that it's not that an undocumented person is not just somebody who comes from Latin America. There's also part of the intersectionalities, we do have undocumented LGBTQIA+2 individuals as well, and there's an estimated 1,000 to, it's not 1,000, this number I can't really read it right now. LGBT foreign adults, born adults living in the US, including 289,700 who are undocumented and 948,800 who are documented. And their LGBTQ folks, detainees, are 15 times more likely to be assaulted in detention centers. In undocumented LGBT adults, 76% are Latinos or Latinas, 14% are Asian or Pacific Islander, 7% are white, and 3% are Black. So again, the undocumented community is a very diverse community. And an estimated 209,500 undocumented LGBT adults were born in 10 Latin American countries, including places from Mexico and also from El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. And there's an estimated 35,500 undocumented LGBT adults that are from 5 countries in Asia. And the top 5 countries are India, China, the Philippines, Korea, and Vietnam. Okay, so a little bit of best practices for educators. So some of the things to keep in mind are it's important to let students know that they can access higher education despite their immigration status, whether they have DACA or don't have DACA, or whatever their immigration status is, so that they can qualify for institution policies that will allow them to be considered an institution student as long as they meet the requirements. It will not change their immigration status, but it will help them again, be able to like be considered for institution purposes. It's important to also be knowledgeable how to best support undocumented students and their family. And you being here today or listening to this presentation is one of the ways that you get knowledgeable about. So I very much appreciate the time that you're putting into participating into this. It's also important to actively do research regarding educator and student resources. I will tell you one thing. I do not expect people to like be completely knowledgeable in everything that we always talked about when it comes to undocumented folks. Laws are changing constantly, and if you ask me to do this presentation maybe in a couple of months, I might give you a very different update on where we're at with DACA per se. So it is important to keep up to date, but it's also, I think, important, equally important to give ourselves grace in the process of not knowing, which means that it's also important to acknowledge to students when we don't know something, right? And you can always reach out to us and ask if per se you have a little bit more on if you have a particular question or that you don't really know something. It's important to not provide misinformation to students and to anyone, right? And I think that we all know that. I'm preaching to the choir. So it's okay to tell students or individuals, I don't know, but let me look into this. And this is where you can also do research yourself. You can also reach out to us on how we can support with some of these things as well. Also help us promote the Dream the US Scholarship. Like I said, the University of Utah is one of the only 2 institutions in the state who has this scholarship. So again, they're very limited resources for students. Helps refer students to the Dream Center. So so Salt Lake Community College and the Dream and the University of Utah are the only places right now who have a Dream Center. There may be another one coming up in another campus per se. There are some individuals on different campuses across the state who are working directly with undocumented students, even if they are not, even if they don't have a Dream Center, but it's really important to do connect students to those resources. And if you have questions on maybe you may be working with a student or with someone and you don't really know who to send the person to, you're welcome to reach out to us and we can direct you to different individuals. It's also important to build trust with students and reassure the confidentiality. So being an undocumented person does mean that being an undocumented person, being an undocumented person comes with a lot of uncertainty and fears. And sometimes students might not feel comfortable to be able to share that information. When they do, it's important for you to know that they are really trusting you with something that is very confidential about themselves, even if they're really open about their status. It's a very legal matter. It's not just like somebody kind of sharing a little bit of what they had for breakfast or the person that they're dating or what grade they got in their classes kind of thing. But this is something that is a very legal matter. So when individuals are sharing this information with you, it's important to know, right, that they're really trusting you with that piece of information. And that's all I have for today. So if you have any questions, we still have a little bit of time. So you're welcome to type questions in the chat, or you can also unmute and ask some questions. There are, if a student is interested in making an appointment, they can go ahead and go into this link, or folks can also just go onto our website, and this information is also on their website. If you don't already follow us on social media, I would highly recommend that you do so that you can stay up to date with the resources that we provide or any updates generally speaking. So thank you so much. So any questions?
Thank you so much, Rosa. That was amazing. Such great information.
Yeah, of course. What is the best way to, yeah, so we're actually working on updating this information actually. So we're working on our website. But the best way to promote the Dream the US Scholarship is by going into the Dream the US Scholarship itself, because students have to directly apply for the scholarship into through the organization itself. And if we do have marketing materials on our social media, or if you would like us to send those marketing materials to you to promote them yourself as well, you're also welcome to reach out to us, or you're also welcome to let me know, and I am happy to send you those materials, or you can use the ones that are already on social media, which is the same ones. Also, if individuals have yourself or anyone else has particular questions about the Dream the US, I will say make an appointment with the Dream the US advisor, which is our program coordinator, Salvador. So folks can actually go in here and make an appointment on our website, and they would make an appointment with Salvador, and they can make an appointment in person or virtual. And this is for anybody who has any questions about the Dream the US. That could be in high school students, community college students, students at the U. It could be yourself, it could be staff, faculty, or just anybody generally speaking who has any questions about the Dream the US. Yeah, I'm happy to share the slides with you, Nina, if that's okay, so that you can share with everybody else. And in that email, I am also happy to include that information about the Dream the US so that folks can also promote it as well. And if you wouldn't mind passing it on to everyone else.
Yes, absolutely. So happy to do that.
Yeah, and if any of you is interested in maybe creating inclusive opportunities for undocumented students on how to professional development or experiential learning opportunities, you're welcome to also reach out to me directly, and I will be happy to work with you on that. Like I said, we have very limited options on campus, and we do have students who are very interested in getting this type of opportunity. So really hope that we can expand some of those. My email will be in the slides, but I will also just put it here for you just in case. And again, please do reach out to me.
Thank you so much. Any more questions? I'll be sure to forward those materials on to everyone here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you everyone so much for attending today. Rosa, thank you for taking the time to come here. We really appreciate that. Please let us know if there's any other questions or anything else we can do for the people here. We can always connect you to Rosa in the Dream Center with any other questions. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.